Hello. In last week's video, In the Potter's Hands, we learned how God forms us and reforms us. How he creates us and saves us. How he calls us to grow more like him, to live a formed life. And we discovered that there are certain biblical principles that we could use to help us grow, to be formed by God. And today, in this video, we're going to look at the first of them in detail. If you want to be formed by God, then you must hear God's word. Hearing and obeying God is foundational to living a formed life. We hear God talking to us today by reflecting on his revelation, his word, the scriptures. And the Bible calls that meditation. So in this video, we'll ask, what is Christian meditation? We'll discover its biblical basis, and then we'll share some practical suggestions for ways to incorporate this biblical meditation into our lives. I'm using the word meditation because it's a word that you'll find in the Bible. There are two different words in Hebrew that convey this meaning of meditation, and it's used at least 58 times. And it has various meanings, and you've probably come across it yourself as you read scripture. And they have meanings like listening to God's word, reflecting on God's works, rehearsing God's deeds, ruminating on God's law, and many more. But do you see what they all have in common? It's a focus on God and his revelation. In each of these Hebrew meanings, there's something else about meditation to notice. In each case, there's a stress upon changed behaviour. This behaviour that changes as a result of our encounter with the living God. In other words, it puts us in the potter's hands. Meditation allows God to change us. Meditation allows God to form our lives. Repentance and obedience are essential features in any biblical understanding of meditation. Oh, how I love your law! It is my meditation all day long. I hold back my feet from every evil way in order to keep your word. I do not turn from your ordinances, for you have taught me. It's this focus on obedience and faithfulness that most clearly distinguishes Christian meditation from Eastern or secular versions. And we get stories of other people, not just the psalmist, meditating. Isaac went out to meditate in the field in the evening. But we definitely read about it more when the psalmist talks about it. I think of you on my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night. My eyes are awake before each watch of the night, that I may meditate on your promise. The very first psalm, remember we looked at that in our series on Psalms, calls people to copy the blessed man, whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate, it says, day and night. In the story of Samuel, Eli, the old man, teaches the young boy to discern the still, small voice of the Lord. And in that story we all see the dangers of losing the ability to hear it. Isaiah experienced God. Jeremiah feels it like a fire in his bones. And Jesus withdrew to lonely places for time apart. Read that in Matthew 14 and in many other places. He went and sought out his heavenly Father to communicate with him, to listen to him. Shouldn't we aim to let Jesus be our example in this too? So what's Christian meditation? Well, very simply, it's the ability to hear God's voice and obey. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve talked with God, and God talked with them. Now sin broke this face-to-face communion that they had, and they hid from him. But we see in the stories that follow, the stories of Noah, Abraham and Moses, God reaches out, God speaks, God teaches, God leads, God forms. Moses learnt to hear God's voice, and it said of him, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. And the greatest communication from and of God is Jesus. And it's his example we're called to follow. It's him we're called to enter into a relationship with. And meditation allows us to become part of the story. By hearing and obeying, we become part of a story. By communicating with God, we become part of a story. By allowing him to form us, we become part of a story. Now, meditation isn't the same as Bible study. As Seventh-day Adventist Christians, we're very good at Bible study. We have distinctive doctrines and there's a solid biblical foundation for them. And so it's good that we study and know them. And the natural church development surveys that take place across many different denominations always put Seventh-day Adventists high up on daily Bible study. It's because of our Sabbath school lessons, because of our desire to know what God says. Now, I don't want to stop you from studying. What I want to do is I want you to start meditating on God's word as well. You see, it's a difference between learning about the story and becoming part of the story. At school we used to study Shakespeare, and it would be hard. The language, the ideas, the world, it's so alien, so different. But the teacher didn't just make us read it. He made us do it out loud and to act it out, to become part of the play. And that helped us make sense of it. It helped us get it. And it's the same with Scripture. There's a difference between just reading the story and being part of it. But the good news is that by being part of a story, in the long run, that will also help you understand more of the story and more of its wonderful author. So what's the purpose of Christian meditation? It's to enter into the presence of God. It's to live our lives as if we walked and talked with our Creator and Saviour. It's to allow God to transform our lives by beholding him and being transformed into his likeness 1 degree at a time, as we heard Paul say last week. It's learning to obey God. It's becoming part of God's story. So I hope you'll see by now that Christian meditation is quite different from Eastern or secular meditation. That's a bit of an oversimplification, but Eastern meditation talks about emptying the mind, whereas Christian meditation attempts to fill it. Eastern meditation stresses detachment from the world, but Christian meditation tells us we need a closer attachment to God. Historically, it's Christian. People have meditated on the scriptures in every age and every tradition, including our own Seventh-day Adventist tradition. Ellen White, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, talks about meditation or the words meditate more than 500 times. And she talks about it in many positive ways, and she describes the importance of filling our minds with the Word of God and active meditation, and she says, we must be constantly meditating upon the Word, eating it, digesting it, and by practice assimilating it, so that it's taken into the life current. She says, the Bible is God's voice speaking to us just as surely as if we could hear it with our ears. If we realise this, with what awe we would open God's Word, with what earnestness we'd search its precepts, the reading and contemplation of Scripture should be regarded as an audience with the Infinite One. And then she says this, which you've probably heard before. It would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in contemplation of the life of Christ. We should take it point by point. Let the imagination grasp every scene, especially the closing ones. So meditation is boldly entering into the presence of God, for a focus on his revelation. It's allowing us to hear God's voice through that revelation. It's spending time with God. It's becoming part of the story. Each week, as we look at some of the different ways that God forms us, I'm going to suggest some ways of putting it into practice. Now, these won't be the only ways you can do it. You may already be doing it. I'm happy to talk to you about it individually if you want to know more or have some ideas or just want to talk about some options. And you'll notice that as we go over these weeks, they'll start to fit together. For example, some of the things that we talked to today about meditating on God's Word will fit in next week with when we talk about prayer. And then when we talk about the rhythms in our life, the daily and the weekly ones, you'll see how they all fit together as well. If you want to grow as a Christian, and why wouldn't you? We need to let God form us. We need to place ourselves on the potter's wheel, in the potter's hands. So try it. Now this first approach I'm going to suggest is a little closer to study rather than pure meditation, so it might be a good halfway house for you. It might get you started on the journey of some other approaches. It's also good if you're reading the Bible in groups or with a few people. It's great for a Bible study or prayer meeting. It's great because you don't need a pastor or anyone else who has all the answers. You'll even find the Sabbath School in this format, and it's called Discover Bible Reading. And for example, the Church of the South Pacific Division has really used this and encouraged its lay people to really get involved and lead Bible studies, and it's really made a great difference. Discover Bible Reading involves a simple process of prayerfully reading aloud or together a passage of Scripture and discovering Jesus' truths for yourself or as a group. So how do you do it? Here we go. It's very simple. You start by reading the stories of Jesus, and the Gospel of Mark is a great place to start. You either say this, or if you've got a group, you pick one person, you simply pray something simple like, Dear God, please guide us. Thank you. And then you simply start at the beginning and you pick the one story and you read it once. Then you read the story through a second time. And then you retell it in your own words. And then in a group you discuss these 5 questions, or if it's just you, you think of these 5 questions. You ask yourself, what's new? What surprises you? What don't you understand? What will you obey or apply? And what will you share with someone this week? And then if you're in a group, you plan when you're going to get together and do it again. And then you pray something simple like, Dear God, thank you for your help with your word. Help us to follow you. Amen. That's it. This simple process enables the Holy Spirit to speak from the inspired words into our heart and into the life of the believer. In this way, the Word of God becomes a powerful thing. Its truth becomes not just lodged in our minds, but we live it out in our lives. So try it, either by yourself or maybe in a group. Okay, so now here's a more personal method of meditating on Scripture. This is not necessarily to help you study the story, but to become part of the story. It works okay in a family setting, but it's mainly for individual use. And next week we'll talk about how it may lead us into prayer. Again, I recommend you start with the stories of Jesus. Try and get rid of any distractions. Sit comfortably. Maybe do it at a similar time each day or regularly whenever you do it. And get a Bible that you're comfortable reading. So how do you do it? Again, start with short prayer, inviting God to reveal himself to you in this time of biblical meditation. Then read the passage. Read it slowly and reflectively. Allow God's word to sink into your mind and heart. So reading aloud can be helpful. Then read it again, but try to become part of the story. Stop on any words or phrases that stand out to you. Use your senses. Imagine being part of the story. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you discovering about Jesus? Consider how Jesus has been revealed in this story. What is he saying about himself? What can we learn about his personality, his attitudes, his desires for others, for you? Now, I'm not trying to moralise or look for a particular message. We just want to remain focused on what Jesus is telling us. Take a moment. Don't rush it. Then talk to God. Allow the thoughts, images, feelings and questions that have arisen out of your time in the presence of God's revelation to lead you into a conversation with God. Be honest, be open. Give God the chance to respond. Prayer's a conversation. So include periods of quietness. And then take this story that you become part of into the rest of your day, the rest of your life. Who is God asking you to be? What is God asking you to say? How is God asking you to play a part in his big story? This is just one of many ways to meditate or discern the voice of God through his revelation in scriptures. But I suggest it because it leads us into prayer, into daily rhythms. It brings us into the presence of God, and the more we do it, the more regularly we spend time in his presence, the easier it'll become to discern his voice. We'll not just be studying his story, we'll become part of his story. I hope this video has helped you discover more about the biblical foundations and principles behind Christian meditation. I hope you discovered a way God forms us as we discover the ability to hear the words of God speaking to us. I hope you discovered new ways to have a conversation with God through his revelation. And we'll develop that further next week when we look at the idea of prayer and how God uses that to form us. But what I really hope you'll do is to give it a try. Try one of his methods. Put yourself in the potter's workshop, on his wheel, in his hands. Let him form you, let him mould you as he talks to you through scripture. Become part of the story. May you hear the words of God the Father through the revelation of his word. May the words of Christ dwell in you richly. May the Spirit bring you to obedience. May you find yourself in the potter's hands. Amen.